handling things. David, am I right in saying that? Welcome to the program.
Yes, sir. I'm on the board there, and I'm really a director on the board. And I tell you, what's happened the last couple of weeks has been such a testament to the private sector. So many groups have come together and worked so hard. Got 5,100 folks out that we can account for sure. More than that, we think. We'll have final figures later, but you had the Taliban on the outside and you had the State Department on the inside, and those were the two biggest hurdles we had to deal with.
How hard was it to get the State Department to even help? And it looks to me, I use the word sabotage. I don't know how else you explain it.
Yeah, a couple of weeks ago, it was just a zoo at the Kabul airport on the civilian side. And finally, the military asked one of our guys if we would take over the civilian side and run it. We did. We started getting planes out. There were 2 occasions last week where we had 7 planes on the ground, loaded with people ready to go, had all of our clearances, had vetted everybody. They're on the State Department list, and the State Department canceled all those flights, wouldn't let us go out at all, period, just left us sitting on the ground. So that happened multiple times. We had just a few days ago, while we were over in the Middle East, one of our planes headed to Macedonia. State Department called ahead and said, hey, don't take this plane. We'd already been cleared by the State Department, already been vetted, people on the plane, we knew who they were. They turned us back. We've had that happen to several other nations as well. We had some nations set up that would take as many as 3,500 of these refugees. State Department has talked them out of it. One of the neighboring nations, even yesterday, as we were trying to get folks out, State Department is still being an impediment to them. So they have very actively participated on the ground. They were giving our pilots clearances that were outdated for 24 hours, so you can't take off with an inactive clearance. I mean, it was just one thing after another. So we now have a lot of folks headed to different nations, and we no longer say what those nations are. We don't intend to say until after they've landed, and we've had the press conference because the State Department is getting actively involved in trying to prevent people from going to those nations.
And that's the reason you're not saying what these nations are, is the State Department is trying to tell these friends of our country, do not let these planes land. What is the explanation for that, David Barton?
There's no good explanation for that. You know, the State Department, if there's a swamp in Washington, D.C., this is the one with the most alligators in it. These guys have been renegades. In any given year, the president's going to have some appointees. But you may recall, even as far back as Ronald Reagan, when he said, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall, the State Department immediately issued a communique that said, hey, that doesn't represent the views of the State Department. Oh, my gosh, the president is in charge, not you. So you have bureaucrats there that have been there for decades. They cannot be fired. That is just the way the federal system is set up. They are not accountable. They know that. They are sabotaging. It doesn't matter whether it's Democrat president or Republican president. They've got their own agenda, and a whole lot of it is to make America look bad. Now, let me be real clear. There's some good people at the State Department, no question about it, but that's not necessarily the senior people at the State Department that can make the calls.
Well, let me play a soundbite from you from one of those senior people. This is the Secretary of State, Antony Blinken. I want to get your response from his comments here.
Let me talk briefly about the Americans who remain in Afghanistan. We made extraordinary efforts to give Americans every opportunity to depart the country. We believe there are still a small number of Americans, under 200 and likely closer to 100, who remain in Afghanistan and want to leave. We're trying to determine exactly how many.
All right. From listening to you, extraordinary efforts, it sounds to me like you tried to shut down every private operation they could to get Americans out. Do you think it's just 100 or 200? My sources are saying it's far greater than that.
Well, if you remember the State Department, they for weeks were telling us there were 10,000 Americans in Afghanistan. If you saw the briefing yesterday, they said we got 5,400 Americans out. Now, unless you're using Common Core math, that doesn't leave a difference of 200. That's about 4,600. I don't know that there's thousands in there, but I know that there's a lot there. We're still in contact with several. We were contacted even today by senators and representatives asking for help for Americans that are still there. So we're talking to a lot of folks that would indicate much more than that. I don't have a number. I don't know if it's in the thousands, but it's more than 200. I can almost assure you of that just by what we know and have on our list. So there's a lot more there, I think, than what's being admitted to.
Last question for you, because we're short on time here. Does your group stay behind? Do you try to find another airport someplace, try to get others out? Do you ignore this, let's get out by today order? What are you going to do real quick if you can for me, David?
You know, from the very beginning, we've always gone in where the enemy was, and I don't think that'll change. I know it won't change. we'll still have stuff going there because there's still people that need to be saved and gotten out of there. We'll still be working toward that end along with the other groups that are there as well.
God bless you, David Barton. The work you're doing and your organization, Wall Builders as well. I know that group well. A true American patriot. It's an honor to have you on the program. Thank you for what you do, and a big thumbs up to everybody working with you to help these Americans and our allies get out of there. Thank you, David Barton.
Thank you, Grant. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.